Hello and welcome to the Sober Freedom Podcast. I'm Christal.
And I'm Lisa.
And we've got a very exciting guest for you today.
So today we have Catherine Millan, who is the founder and company director of Be What You See Consultancy. And spoiler alert, she's also my fiance. So, Catherine, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So, hi, thank you so much for having me on.
Right.
It's been quite a journey in terms of becoming alcohol-free. So I was really excited to kind of come and speak to you both about it today, and obviously doing this with Lisa as well. But yeah, my name's Catherine. I'm the founder and company director of Be What You See Consultancy. We're an equity, diversity and inclusion training company. And I started the company mainly because I specialise in, or I've had a career working in workplace discrimination, hate crime prevention, and just more broadly working in that space of EDI. I'd never been an entrepreneur before I started the company, so that was one of the reasons why I decided to become alcohol-free, because basically I just couldn't burn the candle at both ends, and my company grew quite quickly. We're nearly 3 years old, and it went from me at my kitchen table to now 15 people. So we've been really fortunate enough in that I work with quite a lot of high-profile brands, so Premier League Football Club, NHS Trust, universities, and growing the business side of it was just really demanding on me, on my time, but also quite demanding in terms of me being in a creative space to have that ideas for the growth side of it. But the actual day-to-day things that I do is I essentially go out and deliver training to people. So that side of it as well, I have to be on form. I have to be 110%. We're talking about some quite hard-hitting topics such as racism, homophobia, ableism, but I'm also teaching them techniques on like how to respond to discrimination in the moment. So we do quite a lot of like active bystander training. So it's been quite demanding over the 3 years to get the company where it is. And yeah, that was really the main reason why I kind of decided to give up alcohol, because it was just affecting it and affecting me as well. But I was just really passionate about, if I'm going to do this, I want to be successful and I want to be the number one training provider in the country. So it was like, okay, what do I need to do to get to that?
So enabling you to sort of perform at that highest level, would you say?
Yeah, definitely. And, a lot of entrepreneurs that I've spoken to and I've kind of got advice and guidance off, a lot of them always talk about how it's quite a lonely experience, especially if you're the only founder, you don't have a business partner. And a lot of them talk about you have to go through this journey of self-development. So I'm at the point now where I know my business is only going to be successful if I'm looking after myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why things like alcohol, being more healthy with food, being more cautious about who's in my circle of people is really, really important to me now at this stage in my life. I also have ADHD and dyslexia. So having ADHD and alcohol basically just don't go together, in my opinion. I found that quite a lot of my symptoms were exacerbated like the day after.
Mm-hmm.
So I suffer quite a lot with things like I've got a poor working memory. I'm time blind, so I've got no concept of time really.
Mm-hmm.
And just the next day, getting through the day was just so much harder than it needed to be because of alcohol. So yeah, it was just really a combination of things over the 3 years. And obviously, being with Lisa, seeing her do the journey, I think it filled me with confidence that I could do it and you could still have like a happy and fulfilled life without alcohol. And, I wanted to be my best version for her and, waking her up at 3 a.m. drunk because I've forgot my keys is not necessarily my best version. So it was something I initially decided, and then, I seen the benefit that was also having on our relationship. So we went through the journey together, didn't we?
Yeah. just on that, explain to us how you found that initial kind of process from making the decision to function alcohol free from the start to actually get into that point where you were like, right, I am alcohol free. Like, was there a period of stop start, or was it like cold turkey? How did that?
I think
happen?
there was a good couple of months where the hangovers were getting too much. And what I mean by that is the hangovers were getting too much mentally. So I would suffer with really low moods.
Mm-hmm.
And it was getting me to a place where I was like, I don't want to get up, or I wasn't seeing the kind of positive sides of maybe some of the hurdles I was going through with the business. So I was we talked about it, didn't we? And I was like, oh, I'm thinking about quitting, but I didn't know how I would do it. I've drank since I was 15. My mum's side of the family are Irish. And in kind of that culture, drinking alcohol is quite big. So it really was just a normal everyday thing. Having a drink after work was normal, drinking at home. So for me, it wasn't just about saying, I'm not going to do it. I knew it was a complete lifestyle change.
Mm-hmm.
What, I guess the main reason for it, if I'm being completely honest, I went on a girls' holiday and it was 5 solid days of drinking from the moment we got to the airport to about 2 hours before I got on the flight. I kind of came home, didn't I, to you, an absolute mess.
I remember that, yeah.
And was just like, this is it. Because what I had to do was I organised the holiday and then I think I booked an additional week off to recover.
Right.
And that week off to recover from a holiday, I was like, I've just spent actually 2 weeks doing this. And then the days that I had off afterwards, I was like in bed, didn't really get anything done and productive. That for me then was right, I'm stopping drinking. But I think I pushed myself to the extreme. What I always say to people, I wasn't that drinker who went off the rails, who got into like any type of risky behaviour. I can just drink quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I must admit, I wouldn't say I've ever seen you what I would call drunk out of the whole time that we've been together. I've seen you like giddy and a bit woo, but never like slurring your words or anything ever. But that's just shocked me a little bit that you, prior to the holiday, I didn't realise that you'd actively booked a week off work after that to recover. That's quite shocking, that, I think.
Yeah.
That you knew that holiday was going to be like that you knew you would need time off after.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when I look back to when I've been away, I've always done that. I've always booked a couple of extra days off because I knew that I'd need that recovery, because holidays were always quite a boozy time for me. So I think it was this thing of, after that particular holiday, right, I need to stop. And it was on the 5th of October, 2023. And then I immediately booked a session with my ADHD coach. And I was like, this is the decision that I've made, but I know I need help because I really want to do it, but I don't have the tools or techniques. And he was absolutely brilliant. I think he's saved my life in so many different ways. And I think this is one of them, because he had been through the journey himself. And he was just like, when this happens, do this, use this strategy. When you're thinking about this, and all of it worked.
Amazing.
And it wasn't like, it was almost like take it day by day. Because I was like, I want to do it because it was October. So he was basically like, if you can get through Christmas, you can definitely do it. And I was like, oh yeah. So then got through Christmas, and then January we were like, let's just go the full year, which was amazing.
So even at that point, like you'd got through Christmas, you weren't thinking, were you thinking it is forever, or were you thinking a month, another month?
Yeah, good. To be honest, it's just really hard. So it was how I describe it to people is you've got to put the work in to become sober or to become alcohol free. And what I mean by that is there's quite a lot that you go through mentally, I think. And there's certain things that if there wasn't a strategy, I think I would have reverted back. So for me, I've always been quite a social drinker. So I love going to the pub, watching the football, things like that, going out with my mates. I had to sit down with them and say, listen, I'm not drinking. I need you to respect that. And when we're in the pub, I need you to not just buy me a pint and put it in front of me because I'll drink it. I need you to not have banter and jokes and be like, oh, go on, just have one. I need you to be supportive.
And how did they receive that?
I think at first they were just a bit like, oh, right, okay. Because I'm always the most social. I'm always the one there. I'm the one organising the after party. So I think it was a big shock for them. But I think because they'd seen the journey that I'd been on growing the business, they were just really respectful because they were like, yeah, we get it because we get what you're trying to do. And then I think it's been a process of them learning as well, because on top of that, it came, oh, can we go and do something fun or an activity? I don't want to meet and just go to bars. But then it actually transpired to that they love that as well. Okay. So now when I go out with like my old uni mates, we'll go to a show, we'll go to, we've been to like shooting, axe throwing, all stuff like that. So it almost has taken the emphasis off alcohol, and it's actually give us more time to catch up properly and get together.
Quality time.
Yeah, definitely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I think there's so many more, like, there are other fun things to do, but when the pub is always like the default area to go to, it's hard to think of them, isn't it? But then when you stop, it opens up this whole new world of things that are actually possible.
Yeah, definitely. Excuse me. And I think for me, it's the lifestyle, isn't it? And then what it made me realise is that I actually don't really do anything but drink. So I play softball, I go to work, and then I drank, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And then seeing family and friends, but that always involved drinking. So for me, then it was, what am I going to do to fill my time? What fun things can I do that don't involve alcohol? And that was a really hard process to go through, because the whole ecosystem, I think, of Britain is built on alcohol. Mm-hmm. So there was always an opportunity to get it. A lot of activities that I was used to were kind of centred around it. And then one thing that really helped was I joined loads of groups on Instagram and reached out to a few people. At that time, Carl from a bar called Love From had just opened.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I remember we were in ours, weren't we? And I remember seeing like a video of it, and I literally cried because I was like, oh my God, there's an actual bar that I can go to. Because I was missing going to the pub. I love going to the pub with your mates, having a drink. It's like, we use it as like therapy. Do you know what I mean? So that was really, really hard. So when places like that opened, and I went a few times, went to a couple of his events, it was really good, because then I was like, oh, I can do this and I can be in these spaces. Mm-hmm. And then I started buying loads of non-alcoholic beer, didn't I?
Yeah.
I think I've gone through like every brand. So I was just like, I want it to taste nice. But then it was good, because then I would go into places and I'd still be able to have a pint, but it was a pint of Lucky Saint.
Yeah.
So in my head, I'm still included. I'm just the one who's not drinking.
And I think when you've got like that drink that looks like everybody else's as well, you get less of the challenging behaviour, because people just see that and don't challenge it. But it's the Love From bar that you mentioned there, that was an alcohol-free only, wasn't it, in Manchester? But it was a pop-up, and sadly it's not there anymore, is it? But I feel like that was maybe a bit ahead of its time. Like if it would have opened a bit further along, it might have
I think
been still there.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think there's a space for it. But I think what's hard is that when you become alcohol-free, you stop going to pubs and out for drinking. I certainly have, and the people that I've spoke to. So I think to be able to have that as like a successful business, I think you'd have to be really strategic on, because all of the events there, they were always like fully booked and stuff like that. But, you know, it was right bang in the middle of like Manchester city centre and things like that. So I think, and even when we'd go, we'd only probably buy 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Well, I'd buy probably 2 or 3. You'd probably only buy 1 drink. Do you know what I mean? Whereas when before that, I could do like 5-6 pints. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, in Manchester, they're about £10 each. So it was that thing of, I think people who drink non-alcoholic drinks, we drink differently to people who drink alcoholic drinks.
It's not got that addictive quality that you find it hard to stop.
It's an intentionally alcohol-free bar, so you have to intentionally go there. You know, it's not like, oh, I can go there and I can bring my friends who want to drink also, because there is no alcohol. Yeah. It's completely dry in that sense.
Yeah. I like that though.
No, I
did like that.
I like it. It's a unique selling point for it. But again, to Christal's point, probably ahead of its time as well. But I can see, like, definitely as this movement grows, it become more popular. And I mean, it did go from, I think it extended by about 4 months. I think it stopped in April, and I think it was only meant to be till December, I think. So we went a couple more times, didn't we? But no, it's good, and Carl's great, and
and he's kind of built a community that now then I'm part of. So he's got like a group on Instagram, and it's great because he posts about stuff around certain times when it is challenging. So he was posting about things during Christmas and New Year. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm thinking that. I'm feeling that.
What's it called? What's his group or Instagram called?
So his new group now, I think it's called Turn Up. Okay. So yeah, he's kind of like changed from Love From to then Turn Up. And I think he just wanted to keep that community spirit. But again, you know, in terms of what's worked for me, finding people, met this incredible woman who started a page called Not So Secretly Sober.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Siobhan, is it?
Yeah, Siobhan. So again, meeting her, talking to her, it just kind of normalised not drinking. Because again, being around people who don't drink was actually having a really positive effect on me. Because I mean, it just made me feel like I was normal in my head, because I think the world tells you it's abnormal not to drink in terms of the messages we receive. I don't know if you kind of felt that when you first started.
I think in a way, like the world, like the way I was drinking and everything, which I began to feel was a problem, but the world doesn't necessarily, or England, let's say, doesn't even perceive like heavy drinking, blackouts, losing days to hangovers. In a way, like the norm is not even to perceive that as a problem.
Yeah.
That's the norm.
It's a badge of honour, isn't it?
In that way.
It's a badge of honour.
Yeah.
sometimes, I feel.
Yeah.
And I think only when you step away from that can you really clearly start to see how it actually is, and that there is another way to life, and that we're numbing all of this stuff out with alcohol. But it's not even seen as a problem, I find.
Definitely. And one of the things that I did that really helped was I downloaded an app called Reframe. And that was really good because I was like, I want something to track. So you're doing like a daily tracker. I'm on 13 days, I'm on 3 months. But within that, you could learn about, they had like all different modules you could do. So in the process of giving up alcohol, I also learned about what it did to me and how it affected my body, how it affected me in relation to having ADHD. And that then also became a reason to stop. And I think it really shocked me, didn't me? I used to have conversations with you and be like, oh my God, did you know that now my body after so many days will be completely free? Now I'm going to feel like this, and now I'm going to have more. And I didn't have that awareness of how much alcohol actually affected my body, from like sleep, skin, just loads of things that I think people just don't genuinely talk about.
But for me, it was also encouraging to see you go through this process, which was difficult, but then also get excited about, oh my God, like if I carry on for 2 more days, that will mean that my system is completely blah, 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 or my skin will be, or I will have prolonged my life. And it's like, you're getting giddy about the body's natural, like, processes. Like, guess what? If I don't put this poison in, this will happen. And it's when you look at it like that, it's so like black and white. But because we don't look at it like that, because it's so integrated into our daily lives and our routine and society and culture, it's like, well, give yourself a pat on the back for doing something that's going to help you, doing something that's going to be healthy. But for me as a partner, it was great to see you get excited about this, because I feel like that helped you kind of maintain that journey and keep you going, especially at times when it was particularly difficult.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's quite interesting for me, because there was a lot of reasons to stop. So the business, managing, my mind and the way that works. And then I think showing up for you as a partner. And I think I got to a place where it'd be like, actually, it's really selfish for me to go back.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm quite driven by other people, if that makes sense. And I do, getting quite deep, like I do believe that everybody's got a purpose and we're here to kind of serve in some way. So for me now, the way I think about alcohol, it's quite a selfish thing for me to do. And there is an element where I feel when I'm hungover, or if I ever did go back to drinking that way, I'd be letting people down. And the guilt from that was just, it's too much. And I've had some of my best and most creative ideas in the past year. I've got some of like my dream and biggest clients that I've ever got. So for me, it's like the universe is telling me, like, this is the right path for you now, and look at the success that you're getting from it. And yeah, so I think I'm just at a place where I feel more comfortable with it. But this Christmas, the build up to it, I was talking to you, wasn't I, about what's the next step? Because I think once you reach that first milestone, which was a year, I had a bit of a freak out, and I was like, what's next? What are we doing? So I met with my coach and I was like, what's the next goal? And he was just like, whoa, like, doesn't have to be a goal. What do you want to do? So he kind of left me to go away and think about it. And then we started having conversations, didn't we, about, well, what if I tried like having a pint again? Should the goal to maybe just be only have one or two? Your sister's like a rule, doesn't she, where she only drinks 2 alcoholic drinks and then goes back to... So I was kind of dipping my toe back into what is next. And it was hard because everybody who I know that is completely sober, alcohol-free, they're like, oh, I can't go back because of the risky behaviour and I think because I was never that person.
Right.
It was then this horrible battle in my head of... And I think it was just maybe some of my demons creeping back in to be like, go back to drinking.
I guess once you've been like a year down the journey, you can forget some of those reasons why you were doing it in the first place.
I think through our... Sorry to cut in there. I think through our conversations, though, what we kind of came to arrived at the kind of conclusion was, what's the reason behind you potentially wanting to have another drink or like to start again? And for me, go back whenever you want. I've never seen you as a problem drinker, but I have seen, the next days, the hangovers and that's the weekend written off type of thing, and how it would affect your business. But actually drinking in that moment, never had a problem with that. But for me then, when people like yourself come with the same question, like, oh, well, shall I have a drink? I'm like, what's the motivation behind it? Are you anxious about a certain social situation? Are you fearful, or do you just fancy one and you want to celebrate? Have a few and celebrate, and then do what you want after that. I think the motivation is really important, because if it's coming from a place of fear or anxiety, I'd say hold back, don't do it, because alcohol is a depressant. So although in that moment it's going to ease that tension, you're going to really feel crap and really regret it for the next couple of days, potentially spiral from there. But if it's like, no, I'm happy now, and I want to celebrate, and I want to kind of like let loose in this situation, and I feel comfortable and in control, go for it. Go for it. If you feel like you can handle that, then I'm not opposed to that. I think it's only when it's to kind of mask a feeling of fear, anxiety, uncomfortableness, you're taking, like, not you personally, but in general, you're taking 10 steps back.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very, like, we had conversations around that, didn't we? Like, what's the motivation for you wanting to do it again?
Yeah, I think we literally had that conversation, didn't we? And I was like, yeah, do you know what? You're right. I've remembered why I was doing it, and then I just went rogue because I had a really bad day in work, and it was my best friend had just moved into a new house, and it was one of those things where, like, we used to talk about that and be a dream from when we were little.
Okay.
You know, I came from very much like a working class background, and, you know, we didn't have any money to do anything. So the idea and the concept of owning our own houses and getting to that point in life where you had that, it was always like a dream of ours.
Mm-hmm.
So when she moved in, and it was the first time we going around, like, I got dead emotional and she did. And so it was kind of that celebration event where we had talked about if I was going to, it would be at something like that. But then I think what I, on reflection, probably did wrong was I'd had a really stressful day in work, and I kind of mixed that with this, and then ended up having a drink and just had far too much. And again, it wasn't like, I didn't do anything stupid. I got drunk, but from like 12 o'clock at night through till 5 a.m. in the morning, I was like horrifically sick.
Yeah.
And I remember waking up and just the regret, the physical symptoms that I had were so overwhelming.
Your body's not used to it, is it, after all that time off?
Absolutely. And I think because we'd had the conversation, I didn't feel guilt on, I've let Lisa down, I've let anybody down. My close friends knew that I was kind of at a point where I was like, do you know what, the next goal might be just to have one or two, or at weddings or whatever. But then I think doing it in that setting with my best friend, you know, and her partner, it kind of was a bit of a safe space to kind of test the water. And I woke up the next day. Luckily, she's a nurse. So she was like, drink this, take this, eat this. And she was just laughing and being like, oh, if I knew it was going to affect you this much, you know, I wouldn't have been, you know, I kind of wouldn't have let you drink that much. And I was like, it wasn't you, it was me. But I feel like in my journey, I needed that to happen to really now be like, I know I don't want to drink.
Yeah, it's like solidified it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know a couple of people that I follow, like, they refer to it as relapse, but I think that's quite a strong word. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think that's also a natural, that is kind of part of the process. And for me, it was, I didn't want to beat myself up for kind of giving in, because actually when I first started, the goal was to go for a year. And then I was still in this space of what do I want to do next?
Yeah.
But the physical symptoms of drinking alcohol have just really put me off now. Like, to the point where I rang you, didn't I? And I was quite upset because I was like, I don't think I can actually cope with my body feeling like this. And I think it was because all of my symptoms related to ADHD were almost like exacerbated. So I'd got to a really good point of just managing them day to day, being like, I can cope with this. To then that next day, I was just like a whirlwind, wasn't I? On top of like feeling physically sick.
So one of the reasons you stopped was obviously because of the ADHD symptoms being exacerbated the next day. And even after that one night, like, was it straight back to how it had been?
Absolutely. So giving you example things around like, because ADHD affects like your working memory. So I will forget things quite easily. From like Lisa will say, oh, Catherine, go and get me this. I'll go upstairs and I forgot what it is. And I know some people can do that, but for me, it's every day, every hour, every minute. So I have to use kind of strategies at home and in work to almost compensate for the fact that's how my brain works. And when I'm hungover, it just feels like it's like 10 times worse. So I end up just having to kind of go to bed or not even like move. But then the racing thoughts are also magnified as well. So the way in which I describe it to people, like I'll get up in the morning and it's like Piccadilly Circus. I take medication and what that does is it just slows down all the thoughts and helps me to just focus on one thing. But alcohol kind of does the opposite to that. And it makes everything. Yeah. So I'm kind of like, the next day I was just like, yeah, this is it now. I know it's not for me. I never want to feel like that. And, you know, it was over Christmas.
Fair enough.
I was off for 2 weeks. They were like, it was the right time to do it.
There's no kind of like right or wrong way. Like in the previous shows I was saying, it took me a year from making the decision. What you're saying there, going out to your friends, not intending to drink, ending up drinking. That was me for a year, every weekend for a year. And then by the time the hangover and the racing thoughts had stopped, it was the weekend again. So, I forgot all about it and I'd just start again. So it was a case of, it took the pain and the feeling like really poorly to get to a point where it was far, far worse than the actual fun of being drunk. It just happens with you that it was 10 times that feeling in one night, you know, and I think it kind of probably recalibrated you to, right, I'm at this stage now. I realise that maybe I can't have so many drinks, or maybe I just can't drink if I don't want this to happen. And so it kind of puts things in perspective for you. But again, don't beat yourself up about it. I mean, if anyone will beat you up, it'll be me. Okay.
And to be fair, I did feel bad, didn't I? I think the way that I told you probably wasn't the best. Because I
thought you'd run over a fox or something.
Because I didn't, on the night, I'd text you, didn't I? And then I was like, oh, just to let you know, I'm staying over now. I think at like 10 to midnight.
Yeah.
And she thought I was coming home. So that was, looking back, it was like, that was probably not the best way to communicate with you. And then the next day, I just texted you, didn't I, saying I've got something to tell you. And like,
which is not good.
Yeah. And I always say to Lisa, never send me anything like that, because my mind will just spiral and think it's like scenario. The worst, but then I do it to her. So I think,
the regular.
Yeah. So I think then it was this thing of, even just reflecting on that, the way that I did it, I was like, oh, why have I done it like that? Like, this is not,
but then
this
again,
is not me. I'm not that Catherine anymore.
The exacerbated symptoms of your ADHD is like catastrophic. You know, you catastrophize everything. So, like, you text me, I've got something to tell you. When you come home, you're like, oh, God, I'm like, what? You're like, oh, I just need to tell you that. I'm like, oh my God, just tell me what it is. Like, what have you done? And then I was almost relieved that she had a drink. I was like, oh, thank God for that.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Because it is like...
No, I know.
It is that guilt, isn't it?
Exactly. But what I'm saying is, like, when you text me in the evening you were coming home, all I did was kick my legs out in the bed thinking, yes, I've got more room.
Yeah.
But if you would have said you'd had a drink, I probably would have been a little bit worried about you.
Yeah.
So I get that, but then I get why you would have felt guilty because you were telling me the truth. You weren't coming home, but you weren't being completely transparent.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to be honest as well. I'd also like had a lot to drink, so I couldn't like, do you know what I mean? It wasn't even a case of like, there wasn't even a thought process. I'm not going to tell you I had a drink. I just knew because we've like had disagreements before. I know you always like me to tell you if I'm coming home or not. Because sometimes, you know, I'll go out, like I'll stay with my family or whatever. And I'm the type of person where it's like out of sight, out of mind. And I love you and it's not that I forget about you. But then I will just forget to be like, oh, Lisa, I'm staying out. Do you know what I mean? Where she's at home being like, where are you? Why aren't you coming? And then, but not in like a possessive way. It's just more.
No, I just want to know you're safe. Yeah. I just want to know you safe. Stay out for me, but like I'm happy.
You
like,
love it when
like
I stay out.
Kick my legs out in the bed. That's it. But just out of I know you're safe. Cool.
Yeah.
Right. I can make sure the door's locked now.
Yeah. So I think where I'm at now, I'm just like, oh, it's put me off so much, and I'm not gonna. I used to do this thing of like, oh, it's been this month, it's been like I'm on 2 months and stuff. Now I'm gonna kind of stop tracking it as such, and I'm just gonna treat it as I'm Catherine and I don't drink alcohol. And for me, it's just about trying to navigate every situation that comes up where that urge might creep in. But I think because of what happened over Christmas, the memory and almost the scar that it caused me, I'm like, just remember that bit.
Yeah.
Just remember how you felt. And I don't know if that was similar maybe for you the last time you drank, and it like if you can still remember what it feels like to be hungover. But for me, it's a massive deterrent now.
I think, yeah, you can forget, can't you, how absolutely hideous it is. But I just always try and think now, like, what would it add for me? Because I know I can't moderate. So as soon as I knew, like as soon as I reached a decision, I can't have one or two. For me, like if it was like a special occasion, I don't know why I wouldn't want to have one or two, because I know that would then snowball to many more.
Yeah.
And what's that going to add for me in that situation? So I do get thoughts about it, but I just think, well, what is it going to add for me?
Yeah.
Because it's going to make me feel rubbish. It's going to sort of make me feel like I'd be back at square one. But also in that situation, it wouldn't make the situation any better for me. It's only going to make whatever that event or situation is, it's going to make it worse. So that's what I always refer back to. But I'm only at 8 months down the line. So who knows? You know, like a year down, I might forget
It's interesting you say that, actually, because one of the strategies that I was taught by my coach, Tristan, he said, take yourself away from the situation. He was like, go and sit in the toilet or something like that. And I want you to ask yourself, who do you want to be the next day? He was like, stop saying to yourself, you can't drink, or stop saying to myself, no, because that was almost the wrong way to communicate with myself. So he said, if you make drinking more of a choice, he said, you're more likely to follow it through. He then kind of explained the psychology behind this. And I was like, brilliant, I'll try it. So whenever I was in a situation, I'd take myself away and I'm like, right, do I want to be hungover Catherine tomorrow, or do I want to be sober? And again, linking back to work, there was always something I had to do the next day that was important unless I had booked time off. So it was kind of like, actually, I want to be sober Catherine. But that whole strategy just completely changed my mindset. And I did it like a few times when we were out with like friends and stuff. I'd literally go to the toilet. God knows what the person next to me was thinking in the cubicle, because I'd be like, who do you want to be tomorrow? You know what I mean? Like sober Catherine or hungover Catherine. But it really did work. And I think that's why it just shifted my mind completely. Where I probably struggle now is stuff to do with like being an entrepreneur. So I have to go to events and stuff like that. That can sometimes be a struggle, because I think I did use alcohol sometimes to socialise. So in my head now, if it's something to do with work and it's going to like involve alcohol, in my head it's a sales pitch. So I'll go and I'll speak to people, I'll tell them about the company. I'll be like, ooh, are they a potential client? And I've just kind of had to come up with a strategy to be in those situations.
Great.
Because
that's a really good way of approaching it.
And I don't know if this is the same for you too, but that's been quite hard, being around new people and not having alcohol. I think it's made me realise that I did use alcohol quite a lot to be able to socialise, if that makes sense.
I think it's like going back to what you said before about sort of like, what did you say? Something about like selecting who is in your inner circle and who you spend that time around.
Yeah.
I think certainly like if I was drinking, I'd be less selective because I know it would be an opportunity to go out and drink. Yeah. And I started to realise it would be more about the drinking than the people necessarily who I was with. Whereas now, without the drink, I'm, much more sort of cautious with who I spend my time and how I spend my time, I suppose.
Definitely.
Because I think you've got a deeper awareness of actually how precious your time is. Now, whereas when your mind's altered, you just give it away willy-nilly kind of thing, and you start to realise how precious your time is and what you can actually do with that time that's like really beneficial for you, really beneficial for other people, just to grow yourself. You can probably, like, people listening think Lisa is a bore, but like you can read so much. You're so much more creative. You can do like physical activities. You can go out and do things that you would never be able to do with your head under the duvet because you've got a thumping headache. It's just your time is precious and your time is so valuable. And what do you want your legacy to be? Yeah. What do you want when you're old and grey, hopefully, and people look back, oh, Catherine, she was blah blah blah. What do you want to be remembered for? And it it can make a huge difference. Who you surround yourself with, who you talk to, what you read, what you consume on social media, all helps to elevate yourself. And if you're feeling crappy, if you're operating on a low vibrational level, you're going to be drawn to those things. And it's kind of, misery loves company type of thing. So did you read that? Oh yeah, God, isn't this terrible? It's like, come on, man, you're feeling crap, but I'm not participating in that. When you feel good, you don't want to be around that stuff. So it might sound trivial at the time, but guarding your space, guarding your time, your physical and emotional and intellectual energy is so powerful. So powerful.
And I think it does come back to that thing of acknowledging that it's a complete lifestyle change that you have to go through. And with that, like now, I wouldn't say I've lost friends, but there are people who I don't see, who I was close to, like really close to, speaking to, weekly, daily. And now it's just, they're kind of become that more outer circle. And I think it's made me also realise how many people show up for me. And I think this has been such a huge thing to go through in my life. And I could probably count on one hand people who've given genuine support. So now I'm at this stage of, kind of feel like I'm being my best version. I'm a bit like, well, they're the people who deserve to get that from Catherine. And I think there's just a lot of things that I won't tolerate anymore now. So there's behaviours I won't tolerate from friends and family. And I have been quite ruthless, haven't I? And I've just been like, we're not going to that. I'm not speaking to that person anymore. And I just refuse to put myself around people who aren't going to love and support me for the decisions that I've made, but almost people who I now see as quite negative. And that ranges from people thinking like it's okay to take the mick out of me for giving up drinking. And it's like, why would you do that to somebody when they're on such this big transformative journey, Why would you bring them down?
Yeah.
And at first, I really struggled with it. But now I look at that person, I'm like, that's more about you than me.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but then you just get to a
absolutely.
point where you're like, I actually don't want to socialise with them because they're not supportive.
And I think when you've like obviously gone through the becoming alcohol free, it's a really tough, hard thing to do. And you're sort of already setting boundaries for yourself, aren't you? So like you said, like that personal growth, you're setting a boundary to say, no, I'm not going to drink. And then it makes it easier to say no to other situations or other people, to be able to say, well, yeah, your behaviour is a reflection of their behaviour is a reflection of them, not of you. And it's easier to sort of start to say no to those situations and no to those people.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think you've been ruthless. I think you've set boundaries.
Yeah.
And I think people have been so shocked, like, oh, right. And it's like, not even a big deal, the boundaries that you're setting. Just respect the fact that when we go out for a meal, no, I'm not going to have 3, 4, 5 pints.
Yeah.
That's cool, no?
Yeah.
That's all right, isn't it? But the fact that you don't take that personally, but you've set that boundary, it's not a big, on the scale of it, it's not a big deal. Why should that be so offensive to them? You're not affecting their experience. You're not affecting their drinking. It's just not for you. Cool.
Yeah. And I think I just am like, again, when I look at the reasons why I've done it, it really does make you then, I feel like I've kind of evaluated my whole life. Like, honestly, these past 3 years, I feel like a completely different person from starting the business to, giving up alcohol. They've just been really transformative things that have made me feel a lot more happier with my life. And I think with that, the part of having ADHD, a lot of people talk about being a people pleaser. And it's related to having what we call rejection sensitivity dysphoria. So I guess in the simplest way to explain that is that I will feel rejection a lot more than your average person. And it's
like a physical pain sometimes.
It's almost like it's like a dysphoria, so like in my head. So giving you an example, if I text one of my friends and they don't text me back for ages, or like they leave it for like a couple of days, I will catastrophize that and be like, they don't want to be my friend anymore, because it feels like a form of rejection. In the way it affects me in work is that I will say yes to everything. So that's what it means by being a people pleaser, even if it's something that doesn't serve me. So I would sometimes go into meetings with a client and be like, yes, we'll do all of this. Give them like whatever they want. And then my team would be like, Catherine, we don't even do that. What are you doing? So then I was like, oh, okay, that people pleasing came out even more with alcohol. So then I was like, actually, not that I was being used by certain people, but then I seen that actually I can be quite vulnerable, and around the wrong people is actually really negative for me. So the people who would be like, when it's time to go home, no, let's go to an after party, and I'd be like, yeah, let's do it. Knowing that, like, actually I've let Lisa down now, coming in at 10 a.m. in the morning the next day, not texting her that I was staying out, now being hungover for work. So when I talk about kind of being ruthless and cutting certain people out, it has also related back to me really doing a deep dive on myself and my behaviours and why almost they happen, like why I've behaved in that way. And I think just not wanting to put up with things from family members and stuff like that, I'm a lot more kind of vocal now that I'm alcohol free, because I'm not like, I won't like, sometimes it'd be like we get into like an argument because we both be drunk and all the truth would come out from me, because it just got to kind of breaking point. Whereas now I'm like, I'm going to remove alcohol and I'm not going to wait until I'm drunk to tell you. I'm just going to have an upfront, honest conversation with you why I don't think that comment's acceptable, or like, I'm not going to put up with that anymore. And so, yeah, so for me, there's been quite a lot to come out of not drinking in a positive way, as well as not doing the physical action. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But it takes work, doesn't it? It's taken you a lot of work to get to that point.
Yeah. And that's what I say to people now who speak to me about it. I'm like, I don't want to paint it as this rosy journey, because it's not. And I think it's quite dishonest, I think, to kind of portray it in that way, because changing your whole lifestyle is a really difficult thing to do. And I think what I really liked about this podcast and what you're going to do with it, and even both of your journeys, I think it's really good that we're hearing from people who, 7 years on and 8 months in, because I think you do genuinely need the input of almost, this is where I'm at, I've been doing it for so long, but this is also where I'm at the beginning stages, and this is what it takes.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to, I guess, be honest on how hard it is, but then also be like, it's the best thing I've ever done for my life. Do you know what I mean?
There are lots of hard things, aren't there? But there are so many freedoms that it brings as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's difficult and it's a hard journey to go on. But that's like anything in life. If you work really hard at something, if you put your heart and soul into it, you reap the rewards for it. And I think that's what I'm kind of at the stage now of, now I'm starting to reap the rewards. This is probably the healthiest I've ever been in my whole entire life. And business is doing well. Partner's happy 99% of the time. Got a good relationship with my family. I've got really close friends now. And for me, it's like, as long as those main pillars in my life are always at a good level, I feel I can cope with all of the other stress that comes with it.
No, that's great. I think it's definitely been a journey, but credit to you. You have thrown yourself in with all the self-development and really attacking the points where you are feeling weak and feeling vulnerable. You've not shied away from them, and it's been so tough. It's been tough for us as a couple to navigate those, because I've had to jump in on that too, because I've had to do work to help you with that. But doing this podcast, hopefully one of the things we want to highlight is that it's not just a case of putting down alcohol and skipping to work. There's a lot more involved. Christal's here to highlight the infancy of the journey. I'm here to highlight the the 7-8 years down the line. But there's a whole spectrum in the middle, and having guests on like yourself and discussing different areas. Hopefully, like, the main aim of this podcast is to offer support, offer advice, just inspire and reassure people, and just create awareness that it's non-discriminate and there is support out there, and it's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
It's been amazing to hear your story, and I think it will, be really inspirational to a lot of people. It certainly inspired me.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing with us.
Yeah,
Catherine.
no, thanks for having me. It's been quite therapeutic to get it all out as well. So, yeah, no, thank you, and I do hope it kind of gives a different lens to this whole conversation about having an alcohol-free life. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
Catherine.